Hello and welcome to Creature Club. Today we are going to be diving into an episode of Treasure Trove. Myself, Tim, will be joined by my co-host, Daniel.
Hello.
That's him over there. And Mikey will not be joining us today, except in spirit, because he died many centuries ago, honestly. He recorded all of his parts.
You need to stop bringing him up, okay? Because it's getting weird.
Okay,
Mikey's been dead for years.
It's weird, Tim, okay?
He's no, not you, Tim, the listener. He's been dead for... You need to stop saying you hear him on episodes because he's been dead for a long time.
It really hurts our feelings.
And it's just, honestly, it's disrespectful.
Yeah. It's 2020. Come on.
It's 2020. It's current year.
It is insert year here. So today, as I said, we're going to be doing a treasure trove. We're going through the Dungeon Master's Guide magic items, and we're starting with the letter H today.
We are.
We have a bucket full of items, a good baker's dozen, so that we have one for ourselves. A good swathe of items here. So we might as well just jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, hi, I'm back. I missed a couple episodes, but I'm already...
You did, but it's fine, because the important thing is you're here now.
Yes. The first item on our menu is the Hammer of Thunderbolts, which is a weapon, Maul, legendary. You gain +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. Simple enough, but it has a Giant's Bane thing. Giant's Bane, which requires attunement. You must be wearing the Belt of Giant Strength, any variety, and the Gauntlets of Ogre Power to attune to this weapon. The attunement ends if you take off either of those items. While you're attuned to this weapon and holding it, your strength score increases by 4 and can exceed 20, but not 30. When you roll a 20 on an attack roll made with this weapon against a giant, the giant must succeed on a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or die.
Or die.
The hammer also has 5 charges. While attuned to it, you can expend 1 charge to make a ranged weapon attack with the hammer, hurling it as if it had the thrown property with a normal range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet. If the attack hits, the hammer unleashes a thunderclap audible out to 300 feet. The target and every creature within 30 feet of it must succeed on a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or be stunned until the end of your next turn. The hammer regains 1d4 plus 1 expended charges daily at dawn. Woo! That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
That is a hammer that does not like giants.
So the Hammer of Thunderbolts, it has a certain Mjolnir vibe to it, but it isn't quite the same. So the main thing about it is that you'll notice that it's a maul, which of course is a large two-handed hammer. In previous editions of the game, the Hammer of Thunderbolts was actually a large hammer, as in a weapon that giants would use. But the idea was that to a medium creature, it could be used two-handed, but like a giant could wield it one-handed.
Right.
But obviously, just making it a maul is pretty similar to just making it. And it would probably be more complicated in the language of 5th edition to try and make it anything else.
Yeah.
It's been around since at least 1989. There's a character in the lore book Hall of Heroes who has a Hammer of Thunderbolts. I assume it was introduced before then, but that was back in 2nd edition. I wouldn't be surprised if it was either introduced in early 2nd edition or perhaps even in 1st edition. I was saying to you, Tim, before we started recording that unfortunately the magic items of D&D, it's very hard to nail down their history. Makes sense when you think about that magic items are one of the easiest things to create in the game. Like probably the easiest thing, easier than a monster, easier than a new spell, easier than a new class, a new race, because they're just one set of abilities tied to an object. So when you think about all of the different books that came out over the years and all the different magazines, and all of them could have had it could have been the first time someone used the words Hammer of Thunderbolts. It's very complicated. So unfortunately I can't tell you exactly where it's from, but it's from, I would say it's at least from 2nd edition, but it's been the game ever since. Back in 3.5 it was, as I say, a large weapon, so it was a weapon built for a higher size of creature, but still wielded by medium creatures. Now that we're in 5th edition, they don't worry about stuff like that anymore. They just tell you what it does from the player's point of view, which makes sense because come on.
We don't need all that jazz. I always presume that anything that has giants associated is from the the Storm Giant's Thunder. What's the name of it?
Storm King's Thunder, sorry.
Storm King's Thunder. That's the one. Yeah. I always think that anything that has giants in it is related to that. So I would have guessed that.
I haven't read through the adventure, and I won't spoil it for anyone who has is in the middle of playing it, even though I think it's years old at this stage. Mm-hmm. But I would be very surprised if a Hammer of Thunderbolts doesn't make an appearance
in that
somewhere in the Storm King's Thunder, because it is a weapon made for killing giants by the dwarves.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because there was also the what was it, the Dwarven Kind, the Axe of Dwarven Kind, or the hammer?
The axe. There's the Belt of Dwarven Kind, and then there's the Axe of the Dwarven Lords, and there's also a Hammer of Dwarf Kind.
Yeah, was that the one that was more like Mjolnir? There was another item that we had that was very, very similar.
Yes, there is another one that's more like Mjolnir.
Hammer
but
of
it
throwing,
doesn't have
the Axe of Throwing.
I think it is the Hammer of Throwing. I think you're... Well, no, it's not a hammer because we would have...
I was thinking that. Anyway, there is another one that has the returning quality where you can throw it and it comes back. Dwarven Thrower, that's it.
Dwarven Thrower, yeah. It's a Warhammer, so it's basically... That's proper Mjolnir. This is more like another Mjolnir adjacent item.
Yeah.
But in fairness, it does have more of a unique identity. It's a big two-handed hammer that you throw, which is kind of interesting and pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. It's got a bunch of really interesting effects.
Mm-hmm.
It's got obviously it's got the giant bane feature where if you crit a giant, they have to make a Constitution saving throw or they just die.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's very dangerous. But we can obviously assume that higher level giants might have legendary resistances, so they might be able to avoid those. But even still, very dangerous. Also increases your strength score, so you pick it up, and it's actually a really interesting bit of design where. So it's a +1 weapon, okay? So it gives you +1 to hit and damage. And a lot of legendary weapons would give you +3 to hit.
Typically.
But it gives you +4 strength, which is the same as another +2 bonus. So it still gives you +3 to hit and +3 to damage. But it just gives some of it to you through a weapon bonus and some of it through a strength bonus.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of a little bit of subtle, fun math that I like.
Yeah. It's more interesting to do that than to just say +1 or +3 to all these things. It makes it, as you said, more subtle.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot more powerful.
More specific.
It's less specific, which is more powerful because now suddenly all of your strength-based abilities are better. If you think about it, you're with a +3 weapon, you're really good with a +3 weapon. But with +4 strength, you're better with every weapon, including not the Hammer of Thunderbolts, which is pretty cool.
You just have to have it attuned. Have this on your back, and then you'll be able to hit people harder with a great sword.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, have it on your back, and then you're suddenly the king of decking people or whatever. Seriously, your strengths deal.
I am the king of decking people.
1+ strength mod, and you've got at least +2 strength mod. You're probably already a fighter, so you might have +4. So you've got 7 damage on every punch. That's enough to knock out a normal person.
That's
and if you flurry into someone, you're gonna start taking pieces off them. But anyway, you probably should use a weapon. It's a lot more effective. But if you want to be the king and knocking people out while you've got a hammer on your back, I mean, that's a pretty cool character.
Yeah, he never uses his hammer, but he always uses his fists, and they're almost as effective.
You could be like a dwarven warrior who's sworn to only use the Hammer of Thunderbolts against giants, and so you can't use it against other opponents, so you just use your hands.
That's cool. But you still get the kind of passive abilities?
Yeah, exactly. You still have it on your back, so you still get all the bonuses.
I like that. And you still get the Belt of Giant Strength and the Gauntlets of Ogre Power to be able to get.
Yeah, exactly. You've still got something else, so you're pretty badass. So that's what the first part of it does. Let's talk about the charges and the throwing. This is a really interesting feature. So it's a ranged weapon attack based on charges. So I think it's actually pretty unique in the DMG that the opportunity to make different kinds of attacks is tied to a charge system with weapons. I'm going to double check the Dwarven Thrower, but I think that just lets you throw as much as you like.
It just lets you, as far as I know.
Yeah, it just has the throwing property. So so it's interesting in that sense that it's different. It's actually you're able to spend a charge to make a unique attack with the weapon.
Yeah.
It's also extraordinarily powerful.
It doesn't have the return ability, unfortunately. So you throw it and you have to go get it again.
And then you have to go get it. It also
and then you're unattuned, and then you're like, oh shit.
It also has an interesting secondary problem, which is that it has a normal range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet.
Yeah.
But if the attack hits, it creates a shockwave within 30 feet.
Yep.
So you are in that shockwave.
If you want to be pretty sure you're going to hit something. Oh, and it'll be based on your dexterity if it's a thrown weapon. So your passive bonuses to your strength won't specifically help you with that.
No, because it says hurling it as if to have the thrown property. So you're
right,
allowed
of course.
to use your
So
strength.
thrown
But
strength or dex.
yeah, because it's a normal weapon. So it doesn't say finesse and it's thrown. So yes, you can use your strength. I at least I think that's the intent.
Yeah, my mistake.
No, it's fine. But yeah, so the thunderclap is within 30 feet, which means that if you throw it within normal range, you are within that thunderclap. And then the target and each creature within 30 feet, which includes you and all your allies, must succeed on a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or be stunned until your next turn. So if you throw this within normal range and fail the saving throw, you basically give up a turn to make everyone else give up turns.
Hardcore.
Which is actually a really weird and interesting consequence. It's an interesting way of making it so obviously stunning every creature within 30 feet is incredibly powerful. Stunned is basically one of the worst conditions to afflict on a creature in the whole game. I think that the only thing worse is paralyzed or obviously just killing them or whatever, or petrifying them. You know what I mean? But I mean outside of supernatural stuff like petrification, which is only possible if you're a Basilisk or a Medusa, and obviously as the old saying goes, the strongest form of crowd control is death.
Oh my.
Not literal crowds, crowd control in the context of MMOs and stuff like that.
Yeah. It is kind of like a two-edged blade or a two-headed axe kind of thing where it does not just hit you.
Or a two-headed hammer.
Yeah, two-headed hammer. You have to take the damage if you want to do it successfully or 50% more successfully, basically.
Yeah, you have to risk making the saving throw yourself if you want to hit. Otherwise, you throw with disadvantage, guarantee your own safety, but obviously you're much less likely to hit, and if you don't hit, you don't get anything.
Yeah,
you win nothing, and now you have to go get your hammer.
And that's a surprising amount of charges. I think that's kind of presupposing that you're going to be, if you were to use all 5 charges in one day to kind of knock that out, you'd really have to be either on a very large battlefield where throwing it 20 to 60 feet every once in a while is realistic.
Yeah, you'd need a big battlefield where you can guarantee you're not going to hit all your allies.
Every single time.
Or you'd need lots of different battlefields or lots of different kinds of enemies. But yeah, it is interesting. And obviously there's the 1-2 punch of if you hit a giant with it,
potential death.
If you hit a giant with it stunned, then you have advantage on the next attack roll, which doubles your chances of getting a crit, which means more likely to kill them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so overall it's an interesting consequence we don't see a lot with anything in the game, really.
Yeah.
It's effectively a small amount of personal risk reward where the area it creates almost natively includes you, which is pretty uncommon, and you have to basically sacrifice something for that not to be the case. Obviously that's always an implicit part of, say, spellcasting. You can always choose to fireball yourself, but it's generally considered a bad move. Whereas this is more mechanically, if you want to be outside the range of this, you have to decide to give yourself disadvantage on the attack roll. So you're making a discrete decision where you're basically choosing between a normal attack roll or not being stunned.
Yeah, a significant kind of risk reward.
It is. It's a tough con save, and it's a big downside to be stunned, and you can't guarantee that the enemies are going to fail the saving throw. Yeah. So it is a significant choice
for sure.
So it's pretty cool.
I wonder what the lowest constitution of any of the giants is.
I'm gonna guess it is 16.
The hill giant has a constitution of 19.
Holy guacamole.
Yeah, so they have at least a +4 constitution. 21, 23, 22. Yeah.
Is the hill giant proficient? I assume it's not.
It does not have a saving throw. So +4.
So +4, so 13 or higher. So pretty good odds that you'll stun a stone giant. A hail giant, apologies.
That's a pretty nice, handy little weapon for specifically giant fighting, but also if you just throw that into a crowd of goons.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And of course, you can just use it as a +1 2-handed weapon, and it's still pretty good. Even without killing giants, even without being thrown and risking stunning yourself, it's still a +1 weapon that gives you +4 strength, which is very good and lets you fight better with everything else.
So that's the Hammer of Thunderbolts, basically.
Indeed.
A good old chunky thing to be chucking around, basically.
It's a big stick you throw at your enemies.
A big two-faced hammer boy. As always, the illustrations are incredible. They're super cool. It kind of looks like there's a brain coming out of the ear of both of the giants.
I see that.
Which looks a little bit weird, but I love that stuff. It looks like it's made of a mix of stone and steel, and that's primo dwarven stuff. So hell yeah. Next up, Daniel, since I read the first one, would you like to introduce the second?
I shall. The second item is the Hat of Disguise. It's a wondrous item, uncommon. It requires attunement. While wearing this hat, you can use an action to cast the Disguise Self spell at will. Spell ends if the hat is removed.
Lovely. And the Disguise Self spell is...
Well, why don't we say that the main thing it does is that it's an illusion that makes you look like someone else.
Yes.
But it doesn't change any of your physical characteristics. That's the sort of shortest version of it. You can double check if there's anything else relevant to it there.
To discern that you are disguised, a creature can use its action to inspect your appearance and must succeed on an intelligence saving throw against your spell save DC, which is basically it.
That is actually an interesting point, because it says against your spell save DC, and normally items that let you cast spells will provide a save DC. This item doesn't provide that.
Or a stat to base it on.
Yes, so this item doesn't do that. So interestingly enough, if you use the Hat of Disguise and someone tries to inspect it, we have to assume it will use something.
Intelligence?
Something, like maybe intelligence, like, I don't know, it could, like, you can argue any of them, really.
Yeah, you could.
You can also argue, like, none of them, basically, that you don't actually add an ability score, you just add 8 plus your proficiency.
Yeah, if you aren't a magic user, then your spell save is, like... your rudimentary 8 plus whatever you are.
Exactly, yeah. So it might be the case that you say that if you don't already have a spell save DC, you don't get one.
Yeah.
You just say 8 plus your proficiency bonus. So you could do that. That's an interesting thing. It's an understandable oversight, I suppose.
Yeah.
In the sense that it isn't commonly the case that you use an action to see through a disguised self. But if, for example, a party member was using this item to try and appear as someone else and get into a party, I think that if that person was searched, I think part of the search would include one of these checks.
Yeah, it says that the spell will fail to hold up to physical inspection, basically. Like,
exactly.
If you are like this, it says that you can change your physical stuff. You can be a foot taller or shorter, and you can appear fat, thin, or in between.
Yeah.
So on physical inspection, someone could like try to poke you in the eye if you made yourself a foot taller, and their hand would go through the illusion.
Yes. Yeah. I think as always, we can assume that the illusion spell includes the sort of like almost the sort of psychic effect where it appears real, so people will act as if it's real. So like if you appear like larger than you are, people will step out of the way of your larger presence.
Yes.
Of course, if they don't see you, they don't.
Yeah. And if you are walking through a crowd as a fat person, people, if you brush past someone, they won't notice. Like, it's basically not there. It's an illusion. They'll just pass through it and not recognize. Unless somebody's watching you very closely.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's fair to say that disguise self is always best used to sort of subtly modify the appearance. Or at least that's the safest use of it.
Yeah.
But of course...
it's a risky gambit.
Yeah, it's interesting then when you have to use it to impersonate someone else when they look different to you, because you have to just like deal with that. I mean, something I think would be really interesting would be something like as simple as when someone is talking to your illusory form, they are not looking you in the eye. And you so like you can't actually necessarily create eye contact unless you are a similar height.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing that might even like have narrative implications, like mechanical implications based on other abilities. So so that's the Hat of Disguise. It's a very straightforward uncommon item.
Yes, indeed.
Great for NPCs, PCs, people of all creatures of all kinds,
of all races and creeds.
Yeah, exactly. It is, of course, just a hat that requires the use of an action. So a non-humanoid can wear it. There's nothing that stops that being the case. Obviously, a non-humanoid wearing it would probably want to appear as a different non-humanoid. Yeah.
It does specify that you can't change your body type, so you can't like become a creature on all fours, or like a humanoid can't turn into a horse or a goblinoid, presumably, or something like that.
Yeah, but a dog could maybe take the form of a bigger dog, or a cat could take the form of a dog, or exactly, yeah. Like, or a fox could be something in between, and like a donkey could be a horse or whatever.
Let's put this Hat of Disguise on my horse and make it look like a donkey.
It's all part of my cunning plan.
You shall see the fruits of my labor.
Watch this. Look, everyone, I'm riding on a donkey, but I'm floating in the air.
Have you ever seen a man gallop upon a donkey?
Have you ever seen? Witness my heroic nature, heroes.
See my donkey leap over this 10-foot wall.
Watch this. Go, donkey, go. Anyway,
I love
that's
this
my
character.
donkey arc. I actually really like him too.
DN Steel.
Okay, so that's the Hat of Disguise. Tim, would you like to read the next item?
I shall indeed. The Headband of Intellect. A wondrous item, uncommon, that requires attunement. Your intelligence score is 19 while you wear this headband. It has no effect on you if your intelligence is already 19 or higher. Handy little buff item for a first-time player or somebody who's role-playing a wizard who hasn't quite got the skills, so he finds this headband of intellect, so suddenly he's able to use his stuff so well. Incredible.
Yeah. The headband of intellect is an interesting item. So it's uncommon, which is interesting because it's an item that modifies your stats. I think the reason it gets away with that is because intelligence isn't used for a lot, so it's sort of safe,
Right.
Quote unquote. So, but what is interesting about it is when we think about the notion of what it means to have your intelligence raised to 19, like how much smarter is someone with 19 intelligence as opposed to someone else.
Yeah.
And what does it feel like to go from being someone with less than 19? Like, let's say you're maybe like you've got 12 intelligence, so you're like smart for a person. Like you're not like you're not a genius. Like you're not an applied academic, but you're a smart person.
Sure.
Like to put this on, you become like 4 times in terms of your modifier.
Yeah.
You become 4 times more intelligent. You're basically able to apply like 4 times your brain power to problems. Is almost a way of thinking of it. And like, what does that mean? And like, I think that's fascinating.
You only use 20% of your brain, Daniel. This one unlocks the other 80%.
Oh,
and then you become either Bradley Cooper from that one movie,
Limitless. The movie about not doing drugs, or
or I think Jennifer Lawrence
Scarlett Johansson in Lucy.
Yeah,
which is about a woman who also does drugs to make her stronger. But the lesson isn't don't do drugs. The lesson is do drugs, which is an interesting choice.
Even in Limitless, it's don't do drugs the wrong way. Because at the end, he's like, we've learned how to synthesize it into this perfect form, and I can just take it whenever I want. Or it's like, I don't need to take it anymore. I've learned how to assimilate into my being or something.
I've learned how to. I'm a 20th level monk, perfect self.
Headband of intellect makes you a perfect human being.
Perfect self. Yeah, but anyway, so I think the notion of the headband of intellect as like I think it's fascinating. Obviously, there's examples in fiction of characters where they somehow become more intelligent and the consequences of that.
Yeah.
But I do think I think the headband is really interesting, and I think unfortunately we don't have great points of reference for what it's like to get 19 intelligence as opposed to something else.
Yeah.
But I think that's something I always like to think about is what does that mean?
Yeah.
In other sort of narrative terms, the other thing about the headband of intellect is, of course, it sets your intellect score to 19. And there are creatures in the Dungeon Master's Guide who have a much lower intelligence, and
Indeed.
anything with a head can wear a headband. We assume. So like animals can wear it and become basically awakened. Like there's the classic example, I think we even had it before, where we talked about the notion of like a gelatinous cube that gets his hand on a headband of intellect.
Oh yeah, that was great fun.
Like assimilates it and becomes like super intelligent. Basically becomes like the grey goo.
Becomes grey matter. Oh, that's so smart. That's cool. I like that a lot.
And then like any other creatures, like and it's an interesting way to create a unique example of a creature who, like, their greater intellect gives them opportunities that like they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. Like, what does a horse who's like smarter than Einstein think of the world? Like,
Yeah. I'm trying to look up creatures that have significantly intelligent creatures that, like, my first thought was the coatl, because they're like this intelligent, like attentive creature who pays attention to the world.
Yeah.
There it is. Its intelligence is 18. So a very, very, very slightly more intelligent coatl.
Right, yeah.
My thought of it was if you had it in combination with the Hat of Disguise, you could have an NPC potentially who owns both items, but has kind of established himself as this kind of other person. Like, I think that they would be able to get away with being a slightly like hermetic dealer of information or of a source of information for the characters, just lore-wise for myself. If you didn't want to have somebody who was just a smart person, they would have something like this so that they could live in society as this great intellectual, and maybe he pretends to be his own like receptionist or something. He takes off the headband, and
that is an interesting idea, actually. Someone who basically the headband represents distinct identities, because your mindset changes so much when you put the helmet on.
Yeah,
that's actually, there's a really interesting opportunity there for like a sort of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of story.
Yeah,
where a person, you know, like there's some sort of master criminal acting in town, and like the link is this sort of normal dude who's just like, yeah, for whatever reason, like my business has been doing really well lately. And it's only because like when they put on the helmet, they become almost like so smart, like so their mind changes so much they become a different person.
Yeah.
But they still act in their own best interest, but they're smart enough to hide it. So then it's like,
they're just like 3 or 4 steps ahead of whoever is following them, like at all times, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that kind of super smart character.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. Headband of intellect.
Shall I read the next item?
Yes.
The Helm of Brilliance. It's a wondrous item, and it's very rare, and it requires attunement. A lot of things that you put on your head that require attunement. That's sort of the theme at the moment.
Helms
I think that theme will
headbands.
continue. Yeah. This dazzling helm is set with 1d10 diamonds, 2d10 rubies, 3d10 fire opals, and 4d10 regular opals. Any gem pried from the helm crumbles to dust. When all the gems are removed or destroyed, the helm loses its magic. You gain the following benefits while you wear it. While wearing it, apologies. I almost said while you wear it for some reason. So strap in, folks. This is a long one. You can use an action to cast one of the following spells. They all have a save DC of 18, which is very good. Using one of the helm's gems of the specified type as a component. So you can cast the daylight spell with an opal, the fireball spell with a fire opal, prismatic spray with a diamond, or wall of fire with a ruby.
Oh boy.
The gem is destroyed when the spell is cast and disappears from the helm. So obviously you use up these gems to cast these spells.
Yes.
As long as it has at least 1 diamond, the helm emits dim light in a 30-foot radius when at least 1 undead is within that area. Any undead that starts its turn in that area takes 1d6 radiant damage. So as long as you have at least 1 diamond, you have kind of an anti-undeath aura. As long as the helm has at least 1 ruby, you have resistance to fire damage. Okay?
Tasty.
As long as the helm has at least 1 fire opal, you can use an action and speak a command word to cause one weapon you are holding to burst into flames. I just broke my weapon.
Exploded.
Oh my god. The flames emit... The flames emit bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet, so it's a sort of small torch. The flames are harmless to you and the weapon. Oh, okay, so it doesn't burst into flame.
No.
When you hit with an attack using the blazing weapon, the target takes an extra 1d6 fire damage. The flames last until you use a bonus action to speak the command word again, or until you drop or stow the weapon. Finally, roll a d20 if you are wearing the helm and take fire damage as a result of failing a saving throw against a spell. On a roll of a 1, the helm emits beams of light from its remaining gems. Each creature within 60 feet of the helm other than you must succeed on a DC 17 dexterity saving throw or be struck by a beam, taking radiant damage equal to the number of gems in the helm. The helm and its gems are then destroyed.
Oh boy.
So if you couldn't already tell by the item's strange, mad description, this is a relatively old item, like the Hammer of Thunderbolts. Basically, it's always done the same thing, as far as I can tell. It's always had like these different types of gems. It's always used them to cast those different types of spells. It's always had the anti-undeath aura. It's always had the resistance to fire damage and the setting weapons on fire.
And presumably the light emission.
Yeah, it's got everything, and then it's got the explosion. Obviously, the details of the mechanics are different, but they've always been functionally the same thing, basically. The main thing is, in previous versions of the game, the helm didn't have D10 items.
Okay.
It normally just had 10, 20, 30, 40. And then I think there was optional rules that suggested if you wanted, you could roll instead. But the idea, like the default assumption was that the item had all of its gems.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, the default assumption is that maybe some of the gems have been used, or that the helm itself just never had that many gems.
Yeah. Or it's second hand and it's been through a couple different hands already.
Yes, yeah.
That's a pretty crazy hamartia, like a fatal flaw to have. If you take fire damage because of a spell,
Yeah, if you ever take fire damage,
you might kill all your friends.
you might explode.
Yeah. What's the max damage from that? 10, 30,
the max damage
60. Or you could take 100 damage if it's full. You just got your brand new Helm of Brilliance. You step outside, somebody hits you with a firebolt.
Yeah, and you just
your
explode.
head explodes.
So what's interesting about it is that in previous versions of the game, resistance was designed differently. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in 3.5, at least I think in 3.5, the resistance fire damage was resistance 30 fire damage. So, in other words, the first 30 points of fire damage were ignored. And so the idea was that it was only if you took fire after resisting 30 damage that it had a chance of exploding. So in that same vein, right, like a firebolt, like a cantrip or a really small source of fire damage wouldn't be enough to
Set it off.
break the helmet. But now any amount of fire is enough,
Yeah.
which is interesting. It's an interesting consequence of like simplifying the rules, like because you don't like resistance works differently now to how it used to. Resistance now just halves damage.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be like a subtraction effect. And obviously subtraction is harder maths. So like they just changed it to halving, which is a lot more clean and straightforward, absolutely. But it has an interesting consequence of like, if you wanted to home rule it, you could say if you take more than 30 fire damage as the result of failing a saving throw against a spell. I think that might be a nice middle ground. Like you say, acknowledge that firebolts, like small effects, aren't going to cut it. Someone needs to throw a bit of fire, like a bit of power into this. But if they do, there's a chance it puts up.
Right, because otherwise you might just have some character in your party who's a bit of a troll and just like flicks like a pack of matches at you. Like people always do. They just
No.
flick the match. You're like, get away, get away. Just says a quick spell into the match so that it's slightly magical fire, and then your head explodes on a 1.
Don't do it.
No, my lovely helmet.
Kevin, the light.
Kevin, don't touch the light. Smash.
That's a Vine reference for you.
That is an excellent
hip
Vine
cool
reference.
kids.
Hip cool kids.
Kevin, the light. Kevin. Stupid Kevin.
Another lovely illustration as well.
Yeah, actually, the Helm of Brilliance is very cool looking.
They get the idea across very well, and it's very, very pretty.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can have your own custom ones if you build one yourself, or as a DM, if you want to flavor it a specific way to a specific character or race, then
absolutely.
you can totally do that. It actually looks a little bit like your man from Plus Ultra. He's got his hair.
Oh, All Might.
All Might. He's got All Might's hair.
Yeah, actually it does. That's true.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. You could like replace the opals with emeralds or sapphires or pearls, and those could all generate different effects.
Or anything like that. Any semi-precious or precious thing. You could have like onyxes be like a magical darkness. You could have,
absolutely.
What could you do? Emeralds could be like suddenly a tree springs up.
I was going to say cloud kill, but yeah, that too.
Ooh, cloud kill, yeah. Go poison with it.
Then sapphire could be wall of ice, or it could be lightning themed. It could be thunderbolt,
or blizzard.
for example. Or blizzard,
Cool.
You could even have like a mechanism where you can spend multiple gems of different colors. Like if you spend one gem of each color, you can cast control weather, for example. Might be kind of cool.
Ooh. Oh, what's a brown? Maybe you could have like a combination of like
tourmaline. Is that brown?
Something like that. I know there is a brown one that I just cannot remember. But like if you get a brown semi-precious stone and add it to like a fire opal or a ruby or something, then you like clap them together and you can like shoot lava at something, like combining elements, like in the Legend of Korra, the way they did that. I thought that was awesome.
Tourmaline or tourmaline.
Tourmaline
Or tourmaline.
Yeah.
Is brownish.
Kind of brackish. Sweet.
Or green, depending on how it grows. Actually, this one looks very brown. Yeah, it's brown. Yeah, this is a nice brown one.
It's brown.
It's either green or brown, depending on which part of it.
You could just throw some mud onto your helmet and hope it becomes magical.
Absolutely. Great idea, Tim.
Because the earth is truly the most valuable element.
I mean, it could be like obsidian, like, something like that, like a black stone.
Yeah, obsidian's pretty cool. Yeah.
Helm of Brilliance is pretty brilliant.
Pretty brilliant.
Tim, would you like to read the next item on the list? Oh, okay. I'll do it then.
Helm of Comprehend
No,
Languages.
no.
I'm throwing you too many
I've been
curveballs.
had.
Helm of Comprehending Languages. Wondrous item. Uncommon. While wearing this helm, you can use an action to cast the Comprehend Languages spell from it at will. And that's it. Comprehend Languages allows you to...
I don't want to read.
Is it read and hear? Like you can understand the language, but you can't speak it?
Yeah, so Comprehend Languages, it's a first level spell. It lasts 1 hour. For the duration, you understand the literal meaning of any spoken language that you hear.
Right.
You also understand any written language that you see, but you must be touching the surface on which the words are written. It takes about 1 minute to read 1 page of text.
Okay.
The spell doesn't decode secret messages in text or a glyph, such as an arcane sigil that isn't part of a written language.
Yeah, I really like that last bit. Like it doesn't allow you to understand the you won't get puns.
It can't Caesar shift a letter or whatever. Like if there's any kind of encryption, you can't do anything with it. You can just literally read it.
I really love that about that.
Which is, I agree. It's a nice touch because it allows you to create puzzles. Like it allows you to create a writing puzzle with like 2 steps to the problem where you find a letter from the enemy general, but it's in a language you don't speak. And then like you can either try to translate it with this spell, but because it's a literal translation, maybe like it's not as meaningful as if you got a native speaker to translate it. And then there's also a code in the language once you translate it. So it doesn't matter whether or not you use the spell in the end because you still need to decode it.
Mm-hmm. It's just a direct literal translation, which I think is super cool. I had a Helm of Comprehend Languages in patron saint of the podcast, Stephen Brady's game.
Rise of Tiamat?
Yeah, in the Rise of Tiamat, I had Comprehend Languages, but I think there were a few points where I could have used it, and I just didn't because I forgot I had it.
That's okay.
Because keeping track of your items, it was only always on my head. That's fine. I was just reading things and being like, this is an interesting thing. And everyone else is like, what does it mean? And I'm like, yeah, what does it mean?
What does it mean? The only thing I will say about the Helm of Comprehend Languages, just as a quick aside about its history, is that in previous versions of the game, it was called the Helm of Comprehend Languages, and sometimes the Helm of Comprehend Languages and Read Magic, because it could also read magic. Whether or not the spell Comprehend Languages in 5th edition allows you to read magic, I think is a question to the DM. It says you also understand any written language that you see.
Yeah.
So I guess you understand arcane writing, but that doesn't mean anything. You can't necessarily use it. I think I don't remember how spell scrolls work in 5e.
Right.
I think you have to be able to cast some sort of spell to be able to use a scroll.
Right.
So like even if you could read a scroll, you wouldn't be able to cast it without having some spell casting levels. So whether or not it translates arcane languages up to the DM, I don't think it matters that much.
It also makes you look like the weird monster from that Star Wars fight with your man, or not Star Wars, Star Trek, the weird kind of lizard monster guy.
Yeah.
With the pointy ears and the kind of crest on top of his head, which I think is maybe a strange design for Helm of Comprehend Languages, but honestly, I can't think of how you would represent that as a helm.
I think the idea is that it's also a helm, so it's also like for wearing in battle.
Yeah.
But you could make it like goggles or something instead.
Goggles of Comprehend Languages. Or spectacles of Comprehend Languages.
But it does also let you change, it also lets you hear languages and understand them. So I think that's the reason it has ears.
The headphones and spectacles.
Yeah,
the VR headset of Comprehend Languages.
Shall I read the next item?
Go for it.
The Helm of Telepathy. It's a wondrous item and it's uncommon. It also requires attunement. A lot of that this at the moment. While wearing this helm, you can use an action to cast the Detect Thoughts spell, save DC 13 from it. As long as you maintain concentration on the spell, you can use a bonus action to send a telepathic message to the creature you are focused on. It can reply using a bonus action to do so while your focus on it continues. While focusing on a creature with Detect Thoughts, you can use an action to cast the Suggestion spell, save DC 13, from the helm on that creature. Once used, the Suggestion property can't be used again until the next dawn.
Okay.
That's 2 different mind-affecting spells. So
plus a little bit of telepathic message. Plus a little bit of message, the spell.
Yes.
Or is it sending? Is it sending or message? I think it's sending is the short
No,
range.
that's message. Sending is the long-range one. Message is the cantrip that lets you just go,
25 words or less. You can respond to this message.
Okay, so Detect Thoughts is a nice big long spell, but the short version of it is that you get to detect the thoughts of creatures within 30 feet of you.
I think it's just the surface level thoughts, basically.
You can learn the surface level thoughts for free. If you want to learn any more than that, they get to make a wisdom saving throw against it.
I see.
Either way, whether or not you succeed or fail and get into their mind, they know their mind is being probed after you go deeper than their surface thoughts.
Yeah. That's quite a bit of stuff that you can do with it kind of right off the bat. Because like detect thoughts, and then as an action you can cast suggestion. It gives you quite a bit of stuff that you can do right away.
Yeah, so suggestion is a very powerful enchantment spell. So it's concentration up to 8 hours, so it's really, really long range.
Woo.
Basically, you suggest a course of activity limited to a sentence or two, and the creature has to make a wisdom saving throw, assuming they can be charmed. A lot of creatures can't be.
Yes.
It pursues the course of action you suggested for the best, described to the best of its ability. You can specify conditions, but if you or any of your companions damage the target, the spell ends.
Right, and they can't do something that would be like super duper out of character.
Yeah,
like they can't like kill themselves or kill a friend of theirs or something.
Asking the creature to stab itself, throw itself onto a spear, immolate itself, or do some other obvious harmful act ends the spell. Now, of course, it can be a non-obvious harmful act, like you can tell them to go to the bad part of town and just hope that they get killed by someone else. But yeah, fundamentally, it's just you tell someone to do something and they try their best to do it as long as it appears reasonable.
Yeah.
It can make them act out of character, but it can't make them deliberately harm themselves or in their own lives.
Did you say it was concentration?
It is concentration, but it's up to 8 hours, so it's very, very long time. Suggestion is very powerful because the one of the main things you can do with it is just you can suggest to someone that they want to help you as much as possible, and then you can just get them to do lots of things for you, especially if you're trying to interrogate them and get information.
Yeah. But then once the spell ends, they realize what's happened, right? Or is that just a charm person? Because I think charm person specifies that the person realizes and they will become like...
Yeah, they will know that they were charmed. So this one doesn't say that, but it doesn't say anything about the creature not remembering what happened.
Okay.
So it will remember all of the events. It can probably assemble the fact that it was charmed.
Yeah. In a world of magic, people know that things can cast magic spells that make people do stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a world where magic exists, but you act in a strange way for a long time for no good reason, and the last thing you remember is being told to do so, you would assume that person influenced you in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but the Helm of Telepathy is, as a result, pretty powerful because it's basically got two soft forms of influence. It's got detect thoughts, which you can cast without consequence as long as you stick to someone's surface thoughts, and then it's got suggestion, which is a super soft version of mind control. And in fact, because it's cast from the helmet, there's the argument that the suggestion wouldn't be obvious as a spell effect if they pass the saving throws. They might not realize they've been suggested.
That's a good point. It's like a subtle spell, basically, from a sorcerer or something. I like how sorcerers have kind of taken that on as one of the things that they can do, because weapons and stuff will allow you to cast spells outside of your normal range. So if you are a sorcerer, you just kind of tap into a similar font of magic, as it were. And I think that's super cool. That's one of the reasons I really like sorcerers. Yeah,
sorcerers are cool. But yeah, that's the Helm of Telepathy. It's very powerful in the hands of the player. It's very interesting in the hands of an NPC, especially a villain.
Yes.
They have there's a lot of things they can get done with this thing. A lot of things that they could do to the party. If you have the right kind of party, it would be very interesting to have them be suggested by the villain and then have to deal with that.
Yeah.
I always think things like that are very interesting if, there's sort of something they can do about it, something obvious. But yeah, so I think it's a cool, fairly straightforward item. It kind of lets you very handily deal with maybe kind of one problem every day, which is a great thing for a magic item to let you do, basically.
Especially for standard NPCs who might be adjacent to Big Bad. Because Big Bad will be pretty hard to probe, and he'll probably pass whatever spell saves that you throw at him. But if you get into his underlings who might know a little bit of information, you can probe the surface thoughts and then find out gee, I hope they don't start asking me about this. And then you're like, what about this? And then they're like, oh my gosh, he did ask about that thing. What am I going to do? And then you can suggest that he understands that you're here to help him or something, and that he should help you.
There's no end to what you can do with it.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Really, and that's what makes it so exciting. Is you can literally break into a building and then tell a guard, don't let anyone else in, and then they'll attempt to do that to the best of their ability. and then you just leave. Like you break in and leave, and you know, so it's a great item, nice and straightforward. 2 spells that are both pretty straightforward. Neither of them are too powerful. I mean, one's first level, one's second level. They're both the save DC in both cases is fairly low, so it's not necessarily as much of a threat at higher levels, but it's great as a way to let the party kind of deal with maybe small speed bumps in their adventure in a kind of maybe a way with a bit more aplomb than they'd have to do by just like rolling a persuasion check or making a stealth check to avoid the guard or whatever, just to be able to instead just tell them to work for them for the day and then not have to worry about it.
Yeah, super cool. The design that they've given in the book, I was looking at it and it looks kind of like it's another very brain heavy one for some reason.
Yeah. Makes sense,
but
I guess.
It looks like, if you've played Skyrim or Oblivion, it looks like a piece of Dwemer armor, the ancient dwarven armors. They were kind of bronzy and very mechanical looking, with the little like lens in the eye.
It's like a bronze triangle with the sort of eye glasses built into that.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of a brain design over the sort of skull of the helmet. I think it's really cool. I think it would be a great item to like. It's very kind of it's cool, and it's also slightly menacing. So it would be a cool item to maybe give a villain at first.
Because it's always handy to have like a visual description basically given to you. Like, if you're not very good at like describing how your villain looks particularly malevolent, describing that helmet alone on top of this man is wearing a blue cloak and he has this helmet that has a brain on the top of it and a scope in one of his eyes and his face is half hidden by this bronzed helm. People are going to be like, what the hell?
What the fuck?
What's going on? Who am I? Where?
Wait.
How to confuse your players. Who are you? Who am I? Helmet telepathy. Super cool. Give it to your friends.
Yeah. Do you want to read the next item, Tim?
I shall indeed. The Helm of Teleportation. The helm of teleportation. I felt like that was too far from the actual word to get away from.
No, I liked it. It was good.
Helm of teleportation. A wondrous
teleportation.
Teleportation. Teleportation. Wondrous item. Rare. Requires attunement. This helm has 3 charges. While wearing it, you can use an action to expend 1 charge to cast the teleport spell from it. The helm regains 1d3 expended charges daily at dawn. So remember, kids, bring your d3s with you to every game. Teleport, I think that's like a 5th level spell, is it?
It's a 7th level spell.
7th, good lord. So yeah, that's a chunky boy.
Yeah, so this is interesting. It's only a rare item, but it lets you cast a 7th level spell 3 times per day.
Yeah.
Remember, of course, that 6th and higher, a character can only cast 1 of those per day.
Yeah.
So immediately this item breaks a lot of rules.
For sure.
And of course, the teleport spell is famously one of the most powerful spells in the game. It effectively it lets your characters fast travel. I mean, we just mentioned Oblivion. It literally lets your characters fast travel, but even more so, it lets you it's stronger than that because. At the very least, you know, when you fast travel in Oblivion, it says you cannot fast travel when enemies are nearby. It's not a rule with teleport. You can fast travel whenever the hell you want. It's literally an action, and the only component is verbal. So you just have to be able to speak, and you can cast this spell. You don't need access to your component pouch. You don't need to be able to move. You can be tied down to a chair, and as long as you can open your mouth, you can teleport away from a situation.
Yeah, and it says up to 8 willing creatures of your choice that you can see within range, which is
10 feet.
Huge.
Yeah. So anyone you can reach within 10 feet of you. So as long as the party's within 10 feet of you, you can all go somewhere. And then the only thing is that it has to be on the same plane of existence. And then based on the familiarity, there is the potential of danger. So if it's a teleportation circle, you're guaranteed to get there. If you have an object from the place, you're guaranteed to get there. Otherwise, there's a sort of a bracket of how familiar you are with the place, and there's a chance that if you don't know the area very well, you get either on target, which is you arrive where you want to go, off target, which is you are some amount of far away. Distance off target is d10 times 1d10% of the distance that was traveled.
Oh boy.
So if you tried to travel 120 miles, landed off target and rolled a 5 and a 3 on the 2 d10s, then you would be off target by 15% or 18 miles. The DM determines the direction off randomly by rolling a d8 and designated 1 is north, 2 is northeast, 3 is east, and so on around the points of a compass. If you were traveling to a coastal city and wound up 18 miles out at sea, for example, you could be in trouble.
Oh boy.
A similar area. I like this one a lot. You and your group or the target's object wind up in a different area that's visually or thematically similar to the target area. I really like that. I just think there's so much room for like weird shit to happen if it's like, you know, you end up somewhere similar, you know. It's like teleport us back to Dublin and you go to like fucking Dublin, California, and you're like, no.
Yeah. Or like the person casting the spell only was paying attention to like the hearth in the corner of the room that you guys are trying to teleport to, and then you're suddenly teleported into a volcano.
Yeah, or you remember the name of the pub and you'd end up in a pub in a different continent with the same name. Like there's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Similar area is probably I like similar area the most because it has the potential to simultaneously be like the most wrong while also like not necessarily being immediately harmful, just like wrong and kind of a like, no, this is, are you serious? Like, and then mishap is the worst case scenario. Each teleporting creature takes 3d10 force damage, and the DM re-rolls on the table to see where you wind up.
Yeah.
So you roll again, and you can mishap more than once.
Yeah. And the less familiar you are with the area, the more likely the mishaps are to happen. Yeah.
So there's very familiar, where there's only a 5% chance of mishap. Seen casually, there's a 33% chance of mishap. Viewed once, 43%. If you have a description, you have a 43%. These are all mishaps. If it's a false destination, you have a 50% chance, a 1 in 2 chance of ending up mishapping, which makes sense because, you know, the place doesn't exist. So yeah, if you false destination, it's either mishap or similar area. You can't be on or off target because there's no target. It doesn't exist.
Stay on target.
Stay on target. So teleport is obviously a hugely powerful spell.
Absolutely.
If your players use it carefully, they will never need to worry about the mishap table. And even if they do need to worry about the mishap table, it's not that bad. 3d10 force damage. I mean, worst case scenario, 30 force damage. If they're like able to cast 7th level spells, they can probably just tank that on the chin.
Yeah, and then heal up when you rest wherever you arrive.
And then heal up when they arrive, basically. Anyway, so teleport's very, very powerful spell. Hugely powerful spell. Like game-changing spell. And this item lets you do it 3 times a day. So it's really good, but there's nothing else really to be said about it.
No.
Other than that, it is a fantastic item to give to your villains.
For sure.
Which I feel like is sort of the mantra of Treasure Trove in some ways.
Give it to your bad guys.
In particular, Helm of Teleportation is fantastic. It lets your villain arrive or leave as they please. It lets them do all sorts of shenanigans, like send agents anywhere in the world. But also, it's such a cool item to get as a reward when you finally beat them.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's so incredibly powerful. You get like you can teleport 3 times a day, approximately, depending on how many times you use it, and obviously you roll to recharge, so there's a chance you might not recharge all of them, but worst case scenario, you get 3 teleports and then you wait 3 days and you get all your teleports back.
Intense. Super cool.
So anyway, Helm of Teleportation is a great example of an item that does exactly one thing, but because of how good that one thing is, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. And its design is maybe my favorite.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
It's like a samurai helmet with an upside down A on it, which makes me feel like it's just like a bad guy's helmet he's
like the
anti-Avenger or something like, I am anti-man. Yes. It's our anti.
Yeah, it's a cool helmet. It's like an open-faced helmet, like sort of samurai, it's like folds on the back, and then kind of as you say, an inverted A, which can kind of be interpreted as like the gates you teleport through. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, sure.
But of course, you know, the Helm of Teleportation doesn't have to look like anything in particular.
No.
So this is a great example of like, you could absolutely take...
It's like a mix of a samurai helmet and a Greek, like Spartan helmet, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, almost. I think you could take the Helm of Comprehend Languages, and that would be a really interesting Helm of Teleportation.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like this, almost like this like diver mask, like full cover thing, to sort of represent that you're like jumping through the different dimensions and stuff.
Maybe to like flavor it, you like project with your mind into the goggles what the place that you're trying to go to.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because if you can see the place clearly, then that's where you're going.
Yeah.
Helm of Teleportation.
Very cool. Will I read the next item?
We are at an hour. How do you feel?
Fuck. I think if we're at an hour, we can pull over.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, we still got a whole page basically of items. So yeah. So let's pause. Let's pause.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there are quite a few more items to get through in H, and we have just crossed the hour mark on our recordings here. You may be a little short on your end because of editing reasons.
Yeah, a man with a vacuum and editing reasons.
we're probably going to split it up here. You're going to see part 1 in the description, so you will technically know before we tell you that there's going to be a part 2 to this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have lots of wonderful things to look forward to in the next episode of Treasure Trove. Just a sneak peek. How about that?
Damn. Stop.
Oh no!
Away.
Oh no! I'll stop there. Daniel's pointing a gun at me.
I am. I made this gun out of Play-Doh. Mm-hmm. Don't mess around.
So yeah, thanks everybody for
the gun.
You what? Excuse me?
Excuse me?
Excuse-ums?
Excuse?
So in our next episode, we're going to, well, very soon we're going to have another episode of Treasure Trove where we talk more through these H's. So you have that to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen.
We've got another H to do.
Yeah, more H.
More H.
More H's. You got to put in your 10,000 H's to become a professional. What H are you, Daniel? I'm 26. We've lost it. Daniel, we've lost it. I'm sorry. I pushed us over the edge.
Oh, that was really good.
Thanks.
All right. If you've enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm. Which is very reasonable.
This episode, you can go to www.creatureclubpodcast.com. You can find all our episodes there, and you can comment. You can yell about that pun if you want, or you can, cheer for it. I mean, there are two sides to every story.
Indeed.
You can also find us on Twitter at Creature Club Pod. We're normally on Twitter, so if you shout at the podcast, we'll probably all see it. Mm-hmm. We also have a Gmail, creatureclubpodcast@gmail.com. Send your homebrew stuff there. If you have any homebrew items, I mean, we just talked about a couple, but we'd love to do a treasure trove with our listeners' items, so by all means, send those in.
Certainly.
But of course, you can also send us monsters, spells, homebrew classes, races, all sorts of different things. Mm-hmm. So feel free to do that. And if you have, if the place you listen to us has reviews, it'd be great if you could give us a cool review.
Indeed.
But I don't know how to review things on my podcasting app. So if you don't either, I'm right there with you, brother. Don't worry about it.
Let us know. Email us at Creature Club Podcast and tell us how to review podcasts. Please help me.
And that's everything.
I think that's everything.
All right.
So
stay teleport.
No, Daniel, it's stay teleportation. Stay teleported.
You're gonna have to teleport for this one. You're gonna have to teleprot.
You're gonna have to to escape this podcast now. You're gonna have to teleportate. Tell a portion of the audience that you're going somewhere.
That you're very sorry.
Tell a portion. Just tell a portion.
Only a portion. For the ones who are still listening, we are sorry.
Or you can tell your potates. I'm sorry. There's too much pun potential, Daniel. I can't stop.
Go to bed.
All right.
Best wishes. Bye.
Bye.